trouble for letting this take too long, deciding what's wrong or right for me. I'm in trouble for letting time ever hold on, making me go on with no time to think. But I don't know yet, come to think about it, I've been so blind trying not to see. But now I know, yeah, when I think about it, that now nothing can stop me. Yeah, now nothing can stop me.
One in 13 African Americans carry the sickle cell trait, and more than 100,000 Americans suffer from sickle cell disease. Hello, I'm Ray Cates.
And I'm Avery Martin. Welcome to Helping Hands. On today's show, we'll learn more about the sickle cell trait and how sickle cell disease affects its carriers and their families.
Then we'll hear about the sickle cell parade and festivals, as well as how you can get involved. And so stay tuned. We'll be right back with Helping Hands.
Trouble for letting this take too long, deciding what's wrong or right for me. I'm in trouble for letting time ever hold on, making me go on with no time to think. But I don't know yet, come to think about it, I've been so blind trying not to see. But now I know, yeah, when I think about it, that now nothing can stop me. Yeah, now nothing can stop me.
People with sickle cell are often in intense pain, and they have a high risk of problems with vital organs and infections. Here to discuss the effects on sickle cell and how both patients and families will cope with their disease are Deputy Director Yvonne Donald and Community Worker Doris Ely. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us. Thank you for having us.
All right. How does sickle cell affect people in general?
Oh, sickle cell disease, can I just tell you first a little bit about give you a definition of it? It's a disease of the red blood cell. Sickle cell is actually the most commonly diagnosed blood disorder here in the United States, but it affects millions worldwide. But sickle cell disease is a disease of the red blood cells, wherein those red blood cells, instead of being nice and round and soft and pliable and traveling easily through the tiny arteries in the body, they are hard, sticky, and rigid, shaped like a sickle, instead of this nice round shape of a normal red blood cell. And they get trapped in the tiny arteries, and this in turn cuts off the circulation of oxygen and blood throughout the entire body, affecting every cell, tissue, and organ in the body. And of course, as you mentioned in your opening, causing excruciating pain.
What is a sickle cell trait?
Sickle cell trait is when an individual inherited one normal gene from one parent and a sickle gene from the other parent. The sickle gene actually is an evolutionary mutation that occurred thousands and thousands of years ago, but it's passed down through the genes and has been being passed down through the genes, and it is actually an evolutionary defense against malaria, found in those areas along the Mediterranean Strip, parts of Africa, anywhere there's subtropical heat and lots of mosquitoes. You familiar with the Zika and West Nile? In the same way, mosquitoes carried malaria, and those who lived in those areas had a gene mutation which developed in the sickle cell trait. And again, it's the inheritance of one of those sickle genes. An individual with sickle cell disease inherits two. Sickle cell trait in and of itself has very, very minimal health problems, and only exhibits itself when there's low oxygen, high altitude, and dehydration.
Who would you say is affected by the sickle cell trait?
What is it affected by?
Who is it affected by?
Oh, you mean nationalities? Actually, sickle cell trait and sickle cell disease are most commonly found in African Americans and those of Hispanic background. But it could be found in any country, culture, or creed throughout the world. Those who were born in those areas, again, close to the equator and have descendants from those areas is the races wherein sickle cell disease is most commonly found. But it can affect anyone. One of our most commonly, what we've been trying to dispel over the years is the belief that sickle cell disease affects only African Americans. But you don't have to be black to have sickle cell. And that's a message that we've been trying to get out to the public as well.
How does someone get the sickle cell trait?
How do they get it? They're born with it.
Okay.
It's genetically inherited, passed down through the genes of the parents.
How is it diagnosed?
At birth. At birth. We have something called the newborn screening program. And here in Columbia, South Carolina, and in all 50 states throughout the United States, each infant is tested at birth, not only for sickle cell trait and sickle cell disease, but for an array of genetic disorders. So at birth, a parent is made aware of the fact as to whether or not their child has sickle cell trait or sickle cell disease, and therefore they can make informed decisions about that child's care.
We had a DHEC report for the year 2021 last year, and in the report, it was reported from DHEC that in the 4 counties that we service, the foundation service, which is Lancaster, Florence, Sumter, and Columbia, and we had 829 newborns with the sickle cell trait, born with the sickle cell trait. And to break that information down to you in the report, as far as the race, it includes, of the 829, 727 African Americans had the trait, 64 Caucasians, 16 Hispanics, and 22 other. Of the 829 that was reported, 48 of those were born in Lancaster. They reside in Lancaster.
What are some symptoms to look out for?
In trait or disease?
In the disease.
In the disease causes excruciating pain. In fact, pain is the hallmark of this disease, and it's a disease that can affect the spleen, the liver, the kidney. Anywhere blood flows, and those sickle cells can become trapped in the tiny arteries, a sickle cell pain crisis can occur. The trapping of those hard, sticky, and rigid cells can get trapped anywhere blood flows throughout the body. So this can cause a stroke. It causes organ breakdown, pain. It can affect the chest, the kidney, the spleen, the liver, pain anywhere blood flows. And it can cause infections, as you all said earlier, because it directly affects the spleen. And of course, the spleen is responsible for filtering bacteria out of the body. But individuals with sickle cell disease, the spleen is directly affected, and therefore their immunization or their immunity is affected as well.
Some parents are scared to have their kids getting sickle cell. Who are the biggest carriers of sickle cell?
The biggest carriers of sickle cell disease are those of African American and Hispanic background. However, it can be found within any race. It's most commonly found in those races, but it can be found, just as Doris gave you those stats just now, it can be found in any race.
What health complications are associated with the sickle cell trait?
Again, it can affect the spleen, the kidney, the liver. It can cause, for instance, if a person with sickle cell disease has a cold, that could easily turn into pneumonia. A person with sickle cell disease, for instance, they can't jump into a cold pool. If they jumped into a cold pool, for instance, it could cause the sickling of those red blood cells, and it could turn into a pain crisis. The weather can affect it. When it's hot, when it's cold, when they get too hot, when they're under stress. All of these things can affect an individual with sickle cell disease. Basically, sickle cell disease can affect their daily living and their daily life because of the pain that's involved. And it's estimated that a person with sickle cell disease living daily has some degree of pain on a daily basis because of the trapping of those cells in the tiny arteries throughout the body. So it can affect the body in an array of areas. Oftentimes, they sometimes have to have, for instance, hip replacement because the lack of blood flow and the lack of oxygen can break down the bones, the bone marrow. And all of these things are affected for an individual with sickle cell disease. So depending on whether or not they have a more difficult course or easier course, because it's very individualized, but those individuals who have a chronic course of sickle cell disease, they're generally in some degree of pain, and again, it can affect every organ, cell, and tissue in the body.
How can you tell the difference between sickle cell trait and sickle cell disease? And can you describe common symptoms?
An individual with sickle cell trait is a carrier of one copy of the gene that can produce sickle cell disease. And generally, it doesn't make you sick. You could have sickle cell trait and not even know it. In other words, you could grow up your whole life and not know it unless you're educated and informed about it. That's why our newborn screening program is so important, because through our newborn screening program, we're able to inform parents at birth as to their child's sickle cell trait status. Now, a person with sickle cell disease, they're generally have a course of illness throughout their life, sporadic points of illness, sometimes according to whatever the disease course is producing in the body, whether it's affecting the spleen, the organ, the kidney. It can cause an array of disorders. For instance, sometimes individuals with sickle cell disease have to go on dialysis because the kidney breaks down. Again, a cold can turn into pneumonia very quickly, so it can affect the lungs, the kidneys, the spleen. It's just an array of disorders that it can be affected by sickle cell disease.
If your child has the sickle cell, what should you do?
Be educated, first of all, and try to find you a good hematologist. Healthcare is crucial at an early age. When our children are born with sickle cell disease, they're immediately referred to a hematologist, because good health care from the onstart is very, very, very important for those children and those families with sickle cell disease, because at about 6 months of age is when the fetal hemoglobin in a mother's womb begins to transfer to adult hemoglobin, and that's generally when the pain begins. And generally, sometimes it can show symptoms of, like, the child's little fists and feet can swell up profusely. And oftentimes, of course, with a baby that cannot speak, it's difficult for a mother or a father to be able to understand what's going on with the child because they can't verbally say it. But there's those signs like the fist and the hand and foot syndrome. Those type things can manifest themselves. But it's very important for that family to be educated, get health care very early on, because that is what could help prevent further breakdown of the body when early intervention is in place.
All right, we're going to take a break now. Next, we'll learn about a couple big events taking place in Lancaster supporting the people suffering from sickle cell. So, stay tuned.
I'm in trouble for letting this take too long, deciding what's wrong or right for me. I'm in trouble for letting time ever hold on, making me go on with no time to think. But I don't know yet, come to think about it, I've been so blind trying not to see. But now I know, yeah, when I think about it, that now nothing can stop me. Yeah, now stop me.
The James R. Clark Memorial Sickle Cell Foundation works to support people suffering from sickle cell, and a fun event is coming to Lancaster. Here to tell us more about the event is the Foundation's Deputy Director Yvonne Donald and Community Health Worker Doris Ely. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us. Listen, I am so excited to share the event, the 6th annual James R. Clark Memorial Sickle Cell Foundation Festival and Disabilities Awareness Parade. We are so proud of the support from many organizations, partnership with the foundation that enables us with the means to provide the much needed services in the community. The 4th Saturday in September is proclaimed Sickle Cell Awareness Day in Lancaster County, whereas the annual festival and parade is used to attract tourists on a broader scale to accomplish our mission. The Disabilities Awareness Parade that kicks off the festival brings excitement in a special way to support those with a disability, caretakers, and healthcare workers to be supportive of one another. So we are calling all motorcyclists, first responders to lead the parade again this year. We're seeking participation from schools, churches, bands, steppers, line dancers, skaters, bikers, ROTC to bring their performance, scouts to bring performance in the parade, as well as you. 2 awards will be given for the best decorated, unit and best performance. There's a small registration fee of $10 to help defray the costs incurred for the event. You can register by phone by calling the number 803-577-0998 by September 16th. Again, to register by phone, call 803-577-0998. Now, you can also take part by simply coming out to the parade with cheers as we make our way to the festival. Line up begins at 8 o'clock at the Hot Box on 106 Elm Street. Departure will take place at 8:30 a.m. to the fairgrounds for the festival. The festival begins at 8 o'clock. It's free. There's no registration required. There will be a balloon release ceremony, food, merchandise vendors, free sponsor giveaways, fun activities for children and adults. There will be 2 bands performing: the Fazar Band, who is a local band, and also Jesse James Brown and the Infinite Divas from Hopkins, South Carolina. There will also be health screenings, so you want to bring your lawn chairs to sit and enjoy the food, the music, shows, fellowship, and come out to love on someone with sickle cell and a disability.
All right. Can someone with sickle cell participate in sports?
I would say that there will be complications. First and foremost, they would seek their advice from the physician, because each individual will be different, especially with dealing with sports. So I would say have that person seek the advice from their physician before trying to engage in activities of such.
When should you go to the doctor?
Anytime that there's complications, symptoms that you cannot treat at home. Most sickle cell patients, they are already on many different types of medications. So I would think that they would need to seek any kind of advice or further medical treatment just by going to the doctor to make sure that they are taking the appropriate medications for whatever's going on with them at that particular time.
What are some preventative measures you can do to prevent getting the sickle cell trait, if there are any?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked me that question. Okay, so I had some information that I want to share with you all, if I can find it here, of ways to be a spark. Our theme for this year is be the spark in your family and community advocating for sickle cell change. So we encourage 4 steps to spark change. 1, by simply starting a conversation about sickle cell in your family and educate yourselves on what sickle cell is. 2, you want to screen test for sickle cell trait when your sickle status is questionable. If you don't know for sure whether you have the sickle trait or not, that would be the time that you need to screen. Parents with an adolescent sickle cell trait carrier are encouraged to seek counseling together to understand the risk involved in having a child with sickle cell disease. 4, be proactive. Don't be ashamed to ask questions about the sickle status of a person of interest and their family medical history. Protect your future generations' health and well-being and get all the facts for yourself.
Can sickle cell trait evolve to sickle cell disease?
Okay, so
No. He said, could sickle cell trait evolve into sickle cell disease? No.
no.
They're 2 separate entities. A person with trait inherited 1 sickle gene. A person with sickle cell disease inherited 2 from both parents, and they cause very, very different symptoms. A person with trait is generally not sick, and if so, is very, very, very minimal due to environment, dehydration, high altitudes. A person with sickle cell disease can endure some type of pain every day of their lives because of the effects that it has on the body. And as Ms. Doris was saying, they generally have to be on very strong narcotics, and if they can't control the pain at home, they generally have to go to the ER and oftentimes are admitted to the hospital if the pain can't be controlled. So those are 2 very, very, very different. Oftentimes people get them confused, but sickle cell trait does not make you ill. Sickle cell disease does.
When should you start to worry about your child? With sickle cell.
With sickle cell, well, at birth, a parent that's born that is told that their child has sickle cell disease, they need support from the time that they are made aware of that diagnosis, because their life is going to take a different course from a normal family. Their child may have frequent periodic bouts of illness and pain. Their child may not be able to participate in playtime and fun time and sports as other children are. So being educated at a very young age, at birth, is very important.
What are some precautions you should take if you're a victim of sickle cell disease?
What are some of the precautions you can take? Well, you have to really follow a measured lifestyle that's going to help you support this sickle cell disease. Doris, as a mother, did you want to mention anything about that?
I guess one of the things that came to mind in my experience in having a sickle cell warrior is that you from going from what they experience at a young age and transitioning to adolescent, it is a different it's a different way. So you're forever having to make adjustments on whatever season you're in, and having to make changes with the many different types of medications depending on what's going on with whether it's affecting the organs or whether it's, so there's many different things that you have to just be ready to make the adjustments on and try to figure out together with the child, not to be able to have the child not to be able to enjoy some things of life that, especially teenagers, you want them to still be able to go to games and go to parties and activities, but there are some limitations that they will have to put in place, knowing that the alcohol, not being able to consume alcohol because of the sickle cell disease that they have or what have you. So we have to try to give them the support that they need to make the changes in order to live a better life.
Thank you for being on the show here today. That's all the time we have for today's show. We'd like to thank all of our guests and viewers for supporting us as we strive for a better community through Helping Hands. If you have any comments or suggestions, contact us at learn.tv@lcsd.k12.sc.us. You can also find our content on Vimeo and YouTube. Just search Learn TV Lancaster. For Ray Cates, I'm Avery Martin. Remember, we were all given a pair of helping hands.
I'm in trouble for letting this take too long, deciding what's wrong or right for me. I'm in trouble for letting time ever hold on, making me go on with no time to think. But I don't know yet, come to think about it, I've been so blind trying not to see. But now I know, yeah, when I think about it, that now nothing can stop me. Yeah, now nothing can stop me.